Thank you very much for your patience, my colleagues. Senator Tello, I know you have questions, ma'am.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Chair, and it's kind of like deja vu again. I'm the last person between a meal and my questions, so I'll try and make it as quick so everyone can go to lunch. But anyways, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Maria, for all your hard work that you're doing and coming, especially coming down here to testify. And of course, Tom, thank you again as well for being that right-hand man and having the calculator right next to you at all times. So I'm just going to start at the postponing. I brought it up earlier during the discussions, and in fact, a little bit was touched on. If we were to postpone the election from August 23rd to, let's say, the end of September, to allow additional time, will you guys be able to be amenable to that, or can you do that? Do you see an issue with having to postpone?
Absolutely not, Senator.
Okay.
First and foremost, the general election ballot must be out by September 19th.
Okay.
That's 45 days before November 3rd. Okay. So right now, if we only have 4 days from the certification of the primary election to the day we have to mail out the general election ballot.
Okay. So that leads me next to the precinct officials. And if I'm not mistaken, about a couple weeks ago, there was difficulty in finding individuals to come and be precinct officials because of the COVID and the issues that they're having. And now you mentioned in your testimony that you have 300 applicants. Of the 300 applicants, how many are already valid that are able to do it, like meet the requirements? All 300?
We have them on our list, but from history, about 20% of them will fall off the wayside.
Exactly. So the 300 applicants you have, you're bound to lose about 20% of that. Okay, so that's lower. Now, what is the magic number, the number that the Guam Election Commission would feel comfortable with in the precinct officials being able to man all the areas and to incorporate the additional procedures needed to address the COVID concern or health issues? How many do you need?
So 335 well-trained precinct officials plus 150 additional poll workers. So that's 440.
485.
440. 335.
335 plus 150?
Yes. So it's 485, I'm sorry.
48, 485.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, so that's 485 precinct officials. And currently, right now, you have how many?
Just a little over 300.
Just a little over 300. So it's definitely falling short. Now, having that extension or postponement for the election maybe in September would probably be very helpful, not only with recruiting the amount of precinct officials you need, but also the training, the very important training that you mentioned several times during the testimony that's really needed. So that being said, so you have no problem in the event, instead we postpone it until one more month?
Yes, we have a major problem.
Okay, postponing would be difficult for the Guam election?
Actually, then we cannot meet the federal mandate.
Okay.
Of mailing out the general election ballots.
I see.
Okay, so the general election ballot is due to be mailed out September 19th. General election is Tuesday, November 3rd.
So that would be for general election, but if this was the primary, and we moved the primary to like the end of September, and you send out already the general election ballot, it overlaps, right,
Yes.
is what you're saying. And that federally cannot happen.
Correct.
Okay. So then postponing the primary is not an option.
Correct.
Okay. I'm glad we cleared that one up real quick because I was going to fight for that at least. Okay. Now the time constraints. What time does the polls open on primary or any election?
7 o'clock in the morning.
And what time do they close?
8 o'clock p.m.
That's what I have. Now, I know it was brought up about the time, and considering everything, I mean, everybody has seen the banks, like Bank of Guam down in Hagåtña. What used to take you only, 15 minutes or even 10 minutes to get through is taking you almost 2 hours to get through a line. And we're going to be seeing that type of delay big time. So when you're talking about only from 7 to 8, it's going to take a lot longer. And we've seen many times during election, people coming in at still last end, I think it was Jotnya one year, there was still a long line coming out, especially if the election is held on a work day. So when that happens, it's like the general election being held on a work day. I think the primary is never held on a work day. It's always on the weekend. Okay, so we can, but definitely in the general, it's going to have an issue. It was asked earlier to probably extend it, but going into the wee hours might be hard. But could you contemplate in doing the election, holding it for 2 days instead of 1?
That's something that we can take a look at, Senator.
Okay.
If you notice, something else that maybe help us figure this out is that each precinct is made up of not substantially more than 800 voters. Okay?
Okay.
And how many hours do we have to take care of them? So 7 to 7 is 12 hours, so 13 hours. So if we divide 900 by 13 hours, right?
Precincts is 52 still?
I'm sorry?
52?
67.
67 precincts?
Yes.
Okay, and in 67 precincts, there are 800 voters per precinct.
About, but we have we have small precincts.
Okay.
Hagåtña is a small precinct.
Right, 700 voters there.
Pt.2, I think, is a small precinct, and Pneumatic.
Pneumatic, right. Okay. So you believe that you're still able to do it then within 1 day, or maybe extending the hours?
I was trying to calculate it, in terms of how long it would take. I don't have that figure, but if we take let's say 900 voters, we have 13 hours to service them. It would probably take them about 5 minutes to vote, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then, the COVID-19 measures, how long is it going to take?
Right, that's what's going to be the issue here, Maria, is that there are going to be, distancing is going to be in place, right. And then, of course, people just, it's going to be long. Mm-hmm. And so my last question, I know you're considering it. Go ahead, Tom, you were going to say so. Okay.
We're maybe looking at taking care of, based on the time constraints, maybe 69 people per hour. I don't know. We'll
6 to 9 people per hour? Per precinct, you're looking at 6 to 9 people per hour getting through an election?
Yeah. So we'll figure that out, ma'am.
Okay, so my last question with regards to that, because of the issue, and then I'm sure you're well aware of it, and of course bringing it to your attention again, does the board make that decision? Is that something that the board decides on on extending it from 7 a.m. to maybe 11 o'clock at night, or does the board make the decision to extend it one more day?
No. That's in the code, that's in law, that says on election day, the polls open at 7 a.m.
Okay.
And closes at 8 p.m.
So that means, Maria, that it would be up to this body to make that change.
That's correct.
Have you submitted to the oversight chair at all the concerns of the time frame?
No, ma'am. We haven't asked them we haven't asked Senator Joe about making the hours longer for the election.
Okay, the other one is curbside voting that was mentioned earlier. This is going to be very helpful, especially with our Manamku, and having that ability, and I know you did it in Jotnya, this is something you don't need our John Hancock on. I mean, you can do it as far as the election commission is concerned. You guys can have that.
Actually, ma'am, that has been an ongoing service
Okay, great.
all across the island.
Okay. So the 300, okay, we talked about the 300 applications and the time frame. So, okay, so something's got to happen then with regards to increasing the hours, or even talk about an additional, maybe a day and a half instead of just 1 day to address this. And curbside voting. In Jotnia, what was the turnout? Was it a high turnout or a low turnout in Jotnia?
People were saying they weren't expecting the 52%, I believe. So before the election, they were talking about 30%. After all was said and done, I think it was 52%.
Okay, that's good to know. 52% would turn out on that. Now, it was mentioned earlier about the crossover voting, the biggest concern about crossover voting. I mean, that's going to happen regardless, no matter what we do. I mean, we've addressed that, I think, many years ago in the 32nd Guam legislature when we went from back to back instead of all on the same page to try and do that. But we were finding out that, crossover voting still happens today, and it's still an issue. So it's not something that's going to ever change, or what we're doing today on having either, well, of course, 379 not having the primary, but 374, it's not really going to make a substantial change, because it's still going to happen, especially for those who are running in the mayoral for a Republican, Democrat, and then they turn around and vote for congressional. The other question I have, on Bill 375, to cancel the primary, what would happen then? Because during an election, only individuals can donate to a campaign up to $1,000, personal, or even business. And in the primary, they're allowed to contribute and meet that cap during the primary. But if we don't have a primary, how is that going to work?
So up until today, or tomorrow, let's say, I would think that based on the law at this time, everything collected up until tomorrow will be attributed to the primary election.
Right.
I'd have to get legal counsel opinion. I'd have to get legal counsel advice to see whether that could also be attributed to the general. I don't know.
Okay, so you'll let us know. Okay?
We'll let you know
Because
tomorrow.
If this bill or 375 passes, then we
Yes.
all need to know that we have a cap, at 1,000, because it's no primary in play and it goes straight to the general. Interesting. I'm looking at what did you find in the Singapore election? You mentioned that you were watching Singapore. What was interesting about that, or helpful for Guam to look at?
Well, the staff actually were keeping tabs on that. But one of the facts they brought up was they had polling places outside of Singapore. There's millions of people there, and they still had the election. That was a glaring fact, that they had millions of people there, and they still had the election.
I see. Okay, I guess I'm interested too, and to look at that as well. We talked earlier about you and I regarding the cost. Okay, right now the ballots that you have, and you mentioned it was like 80 cents per ballot. Right now, if everything is status quo, the way it is right now. By Bill 374, if it should pass. Well, first, what's the cost for the ballots right now at 80 cents times both back and front?
So it would be 80 cents per ballot sheet.
Times?
And then, so we would have 2 ballot sheets because of the nonpartisan race. So we would take the 80 cents times 2, and we are expecting about our voter registry to climb to about 55,000.
Okay.
So we're looking at about $88,000 for primary election ballots.
Just for the ballots at 88,000?
That's correct.
Okay. Now if Bill 374 were to pass, how much would it then cost? Because now you're not doing both sides. How much would that
Okay, so we would the most visible cost reduction would be the elimination of the one ballot sheet. So we will take away one ballot sheet, and so it would be about $44,000.
Okay, so it's 50% cost savings.
Right.
Okay. Now, if we didn't have a primary, how much cost savings would that be?
Over $400,000.
So we have a cost savings of 44,000 with a primary, or uncontested, or those who are only contested, and then we have a $400,000 cost savings with no primary. Okay.
Correct. But again, as mentioned in the testimony, we have to be careful about the possibility of a runoff if there is no primary.
And that leads me to my next question, the runoff. I know you've been, you're a person that gives your opinion on certain things, maybes, or it could be, could not be, but you've also been one to give your own personal, as the director, the probability. Mm-hmm. I've heard you many times give me examples of, the probability of that happening. So what is the probability of a runoff if there was no primary, and the probability for a runoff on the congressional side?
With 3 candidates, ma'am, it's a very high probability.
That's good. You've always never been one shy to give your analysis of something, and definitely respect that too as well. Okay, and Senator Munia had to leave, and she had a couple questions she wanted to ask, so she asked if I ask you. On the, if there is a runoff, since we're still on the runoff, it's perfect, it segues beautifully. The question was, if there was a runoff in the congressional side, would it be the 2 top vote getters to go to the runoff, or would it be 1 Republican and 1 Democrat?
Top 2 vote getters.
Okay. In Tamuning and Jotnya, on the crossover voters, the probability is you have makes up 20% of the voters in Tamuning and Jigo. I think the question she wanted to know, what really is the issue? I think we mentioned that earlier about crossovering. I mean, we're still going to have a crossovers regardless. Mm-hmm. So maybe the question would be proffered, if we were to have Bill 374 and it was put into place, the crossover voting, and highly probable, or highly, you're definitely your opinion with that, would it be a lot less than 20% on?
Let's look at the situation more clearly, or present some more information.
Okay.
The Tamuning and the Jigo ballot, in the one side, will only have a congressional delegate race, right? And that's the Democrat side. Mm-hmm. So in the back, or in the other side, on the Republican side, there will be no congressional delegate race. Right. So it would somehow, the voter may think that, hey, there's no congressional delegate race there. I may not be crossing over, right, because I'm not voting for a delegate. I'm voting for a mayor or a vice mayor in Jigo.
So in Tamuning mayors, is there a competition in there on the Democrats and Republicans for mayor?
No,
in Tamuning.
It's in Tamuning. It's a Republican competition for mayor.
There is a Republican competition for mayor. Okay, so there is a probability of crossover then.
High probability. Because
someone can go and vote on the Republican side and then turn around and vote on the Democrat side very high. Very, very high. Maybe that 20% is going to go a lot higher anticipated.
And that's something we'll watch out for if this happens.
Right. So regardless if there's a primary or not I mean, regardless if 374 is passed and, or even having a primary, it's still a problem on crossovers.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter either or, it's still a problem, whether it's 374 passes or not, or we go status quo.
Since I started, when I first started 9 years ago, there were thousands of crossovers.
Yeah.
The last election, we had 912, I believe is the number I'm remembering. So we're getting there.
We're getting there.
Yeah, so we don't, but, come if, with only the contested races on the ballot, that's going to be a challenge.
The last question I have, and thank you for Mr. Chair and Senator Moylan for being here on my questioning. I appreciate it. 25 people, that's all that's going to be allowed in the rooms? Because, when I go in to do the ballots, okay, so that's 25 people at a time in one of the rooms, in the classrooms at the schools or wherever it's at. I know that Mooning actually had they had different classrooms as well. But what about the hallways, that people are lining up? Are you just going to be doing distancing, or because those hallways are kind of tight in some areas? And that's going to have to be a 25 individual. So I'm just bringing that up, okay, because which ends, Maria, I'd love to see what the Guam Election Commission has in place for a plan to address this the COVID and the voting in the circumstances we're under a health emergency. What is your plan?
So for social distancing, for outside the hallways, ma'am?
Well, I'm just looking, actually, I'm looking for just, really a documented plan. Like, this is Mooning, and this is how the line is gonna go, okay. And this is where the classrooms are gonna be, and this is how we're gonna keep our Manamku safe, and those who are walking through safe. That's the kind of plan I'm kind of looking for, not just saying, okay, 5 feet or 6 feet apart, 25 in a room. There's got to be a plan, a master plan on each location to ensure that our Manamku is safe, because 52% or 50% or 52% are over the age of 50 years old. So it's so concerning to me, and then I'm thinking of a low turnout, even on every primary. There's always been a low turnout. Can you imagine what the turnout's going to be now with COVID luring over everyone's heads, and family members who, even though they're young, they take care of their parents who are afraid to go and vote. So it would be nice to see a plan, a documented plan for this.
We are getting to there, ma'am.
Yeah.
We won't have it by tomorrow. We will. The board is looking to us to get it to them soon, though.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I know that you guys are working on the weekends too and trying to get everything in place. and it should be, because this is an election year coming up, and we've got to protect our Manamku out there. We've got to protect everybody, because it's not just Manamku now that's catching this. They're finding going into younger people now are catching it. So again, thank you for being here as always and enlightening us with what's going on with the Guam Election Commission. Thank you, Tom, too, as well. Si Diyos masi, Mr. Chair, and thank you for sticking it out with me.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Tello. Thank you, Ms. Pangilinan. My colleagues, we will return. Thank you, Ms. Pangilinan. You wouldn't have to return. I don't believe you need to, but we're getting the public health folks to show up this afternoon or in another hour and a half.
Okay.
And be able to describe what's going on so that we can have a warm and fuzzy feeling. Because, I don't know, my opinion is, number one, if we don't have a primary, all we did was we moved all the people to November. And if we're going to have a COVID crisis, it'll just move to November. But with that said, we're going to recess until scheduled at 2:30, but it'll probably be a little bit after 2:30 we will return.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.